Welcome to the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. You know, the sports world has been fantastic over the last couple of weeks. You have had in the baseball world the MLB playoffs. You've been having the best teams in baseball go at it. And you've had the World Series. You've had the Philadelphia Phillies and the Houston Astros going at it in the 2022 World Series. Has been amazing and has been some brilliant amount of baseball out there in the World Series. And when it comes to the 2022 MLB World Series and also NFL Week 9, which we'll talk about later here in this show, I had to bring on someone very well knowledgeable, someone who knows what he's talking about, and someone who's been on this show before. Andre Robinson from the Rise Up family. Welcome back to the Sports Angle. How's it going, my friend?
Yo, my guy, it is always a pleasure, always fun to, from all the way from the 716, be on a phenomenal show in Las Vegas, Nevada. Listen, if y'all don't know who this guy is right here that's doing this show, you should, man. Support positivity. My guy, Rocco Rickelli, Ian Rickelli in the building doing this thing. I appreciate the invite, and I'm always here, bro.
Absolutely. So, very quickly, just to start out this show, talking about the 2022 World Series, Houston versus Philadelphia. Now, I'm going to say nobody had Philadelphia making it to the World Series. Really, no one thought that it was going to be an NL East team with how dominant Dodgers were in the regular season. But yet, you are Game 5. Houston's up 3-2 in this series. They're heading back to Houston for Game 6. So, Andre, when it comes to the MLB World Series, are you going with the experts and say that it's going to be a series ender on Game 6? Is the Houston Astros going to win at Minute Maid Park? Or is Philadelphia going to make a comeback, win 2 straight, and win their first title in over a decade?
Well, now, hold up, wait a minute. Thought that I was finished. When I pulled that Aston Martin, I thought it was ready. Philly ain't going out like that, first and foremost. Let's be clear right now. Philadelphia is not going out without a bang. So for those experts, I don't know, man. They just call anybody experts nowadays. Saying that they done in 6, I doubt it. This ain't a Michael Jordan NBA Finals series, folks. We got a problem in Houston, man. Usually 3-2. You better watch out because the other team usually wins those last 2 games. We get a full 7-game series, and I got them getting a full 7-game series again for the World Series. Bryce Harper and them guys ain't going out without a bang. So Game 6, they're going to tie that thing up. In Game 7, we're going to see. And I think McMillan and them in Philly right now got something to say about that. All right?
It's always about dreams and nightmares. You already know.
Now,
when it comes to Philadelphia versus Houston, I had Philadelphia in 7. Is that what your prediction is as well?
Absolutely. I told you great minds think alike. The upper echelon. Yes, absolutely, man. I got Philly in 7. You know what's so interesting is that the Houston Astros have been in this situation before. Like, they've been in the World Series, man. They keep making it to the World Series. A great organization they got over there doing a thing. And we got to see, parallel universe with, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Houston Texans playing last night, so the World Series was Houston, Philly, and now we got we had the world's boringest game on Thursday Night Football between Houston and Philly. So I got Philly in this one. Philly won last night. They're going to win again.
So before we transition over to the NBA here on the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, you brought up Bryce Harper, Las Vegas. He's always going to be a hero here in Las Vegas. And yeah, it'd be great to see him win a World Series. But as somebody who was born in Houston, someone who was born in H-Town, most people expected me to root for the Houston Astros, but because of what happened in 2017, because of them denying that they ever cheated, even though it was very obvious that they cheated, a lot of people, including myself, just can't support Houston. They just couldn't in good conscience pick the Astros to win this World Series. Would you be in the same situation there because of what happened in 2017? It's really hard to cheer and support the Astros after that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm 100% behind not supporting cheaters. Let's not support the cheater. They had their debacle. They got caught. They're not the first team to get caught, but they've gotten caught. I'm not a big Houston Astros fan whatsoever. After those guys got caught, I got to see some of these guys here when the Toronto Blue Jays had their team here in Buffalo. I got to see Houston up close and personal. Not a big fan of those Houston Astros whatsoever. In this case, I'm more of a fan of Astro from the Jets at this point than Astro Nation in Houston. And by the way, Houston right now, shout out to the city of Houston, because I know there was just a tragedy in Houston just recently with Takeoff being shot out there in Houston. So I'll be amiss not to mention that. Astro World, as Travis Scott calls it, we'll be looking for something to be happy about, but I just don't want it to come from the Houston Astros at this point.
You mentioned when Toronto was up there in Buffalo, kind of makes me wonder, I love watching the Toronto Blue Jays. To me, they're the most entertaining team in baseball. There's so many characters, so many personalities on the Toronto Blue Jays, so many young guys who are helping the sport of baseball. Are you a Blue Jays fan? Like, if I had to take an educated guess, are you a Blue Jays fan by any chance?
No, I'm actually, but I got to watch a lot of those guys grow up from the farm team, the Buffalo Bisons. Obviously, we cover baseball again, that upper echelon. Man, I tell you about it. I get to cover the Buffalo Bisons here, and a lot of those guys get brought up to the major leagues. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., one of the most phenomenal players in the major leagues. I got to watch here personally for a while and watch his development, looking like his dad at the diamond, his hitting ability, this, that, and the third. They're a phenomenal team. A lot of homegrown players come from the farm team, the Buffalo Bisons team. Shout out to the Bisons. But no, I'm not a fan of the Toronto Blue Jays, but I would love to go cover Toronto Blue Jays baseball in Toronto, though.
Covering anything in Toronto would definitely be a big deal. I mean, they're one of the biggest cities, one of the biggest sports cities as of right now. Now, moving over to the NBA, because we're kind of staying in New York here, there was the news about the Brooklyn Nets suspending Kyrie Irving over all the comments and all of the stuff he has done over the last week. And I want to get your take on this because I'll give mine in a minute. But when it comes to the Brooklyn Nets, when it comes to Kyrie Irving, it really feels like this should be a point where both sides agree to move on, where both sides, you know what, this has been a dumpster fire. There's been no positives from this deal. Why don't we just shake hands and move on?
You know what? I'm going to be very honest with you. Just a few minutes ago, when I looked at the synopsis of the show and I saw that earlier, I seen something go across my face. And it was the This Is It tour. Michael Jackson came back, reincarnated alive again, doing the moonwalk past me. And that's what I get from this situation. This should be it. Number one, first and foremost, doggone well, any comments of anti-Semitic is getting you suspended anywhere. That don't matter. You could be a media figure, baseball player, football, hockey. It's universal. You do any of that and you automatically suspended. So for Kyrie Irving at this point, I mean, he had a positive stance earlier last year, and I could respect his stance last year, but this year, sir, get it together, okay? I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if you're trying to sabotage people. And where's Brooklyn at? I ain't heard much from Brooklyn at all. Where's Brooklyn at with this whole situation? You know what I mean?
They donated $500,000. So that's their contribution.
Yeah,
$500,000.
Right, and $500 grand to them is like $5 to us. So I mean, is that really? Is this one of those put a Band-Aid over an open wound situation? We'll throw money at it. Like, it's time for him to go. It was time for him to go. To me, honestly, it was time for him to go when James Harden left. It was time for him to go. It was time for him to go when Ben Simmons came along because I just don't understand the move with Ben Simmons. I never understood it whatsoever. So the fact that I can't understand the move with him makes me question the rest of the team because where does Ben Simmons fit in this equation? And if they don't fit, does Kyrie really fit? Because Kyrie is supposed to be the point guard, combo guard, shooting guard. I'm not understanding. So it makes me kind of wonder.
So, talking about the Kyrie Irving situation here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We're here with Andre Robinson from Rise Up Family. Now, really the way I've looked at it is, look, Brooklyn, you're 2-6. You already tossed Steve Nash under the bus.
Dumpster juice.
Which, by the way, Steve Nash wasn't the problem.
Nope.
We all know who the problem is.
Yep. You know who it is.
Oh, yeah, we all know.
Speak on it.
The problem is you can't get rid of Kevin Durant.
Damn right. There it is. I'm glad somebody said it. I mean,
this is a guy who wanted to get traded and didn't get traded. This is a guy who wanted his own coach to be brought in and then didn't like it. This is a guy who's been wanting all these moves to happen and then regret them 5 or 6 months later.
Because he ain't a leader. He never been a leader. He never was a leader. He never was a leader at OKC. He wasn't a leader.
That was Westbrook. It was Westbrook.
He wasn't a leader then. Westbrook wasn't even really a leader. They was fighting over who was a leader, and neither one of them was really a leader in OKC, and that's why they could never get the job done. The leaders lead, and that's the thing. Sometimes in leadership, you also have to learn how to listen, know how to listen. Sometimes in leadership, you also have to learn how to be able to spread things abroad so that you can make the best for everybody in the situation and not just yourself. And Kevin Durant, he's a alpha dog in his own right as far as individually, but as far as leadership wise, he's never been that person.
Kevin Durant has never been the guy. He has never been the guy that you trust to lead a team. He just never has been. Even at Golden State, everyone always sang his praises, and I go, well, you have Steph, who's a top 10 player in the NBA. I mean, top 10 all time in the NBA.
Right. So, you're right about that. Right about that. You are absolutely right. And the fact that people have totally ignored or tried to play or try to turn deaf ear to the fact that Kevin Durant is really problem number one over there in Brooklyn, who can't get it done once again. You can't get it done once again. You had James Harden, you couldn't get it done. You had Kyrie, you couldn't get it done. You had all these other players that was on the team, all these pieces, you couldn't get it done. I mean, come on, man. I mean, if we talking about the most disappointing team in the NBA in the last couple of years, where's Brooklyn at? Where's Brooklyn at? I need to hear Jay-Z's voice in this situation. You know what? I guarantee, Big Papa, Notorious B.I.G. is turning over in his grave right now for this dismal performance that he's getting from the Brooklyn Nets.
I mean, we're going to go one step even more into this. Let's dig a little deeper. Has Brooklyn really ever been a success? I mean, ever since they moved from New Jersey over to Brooklyn, they bring over all these all-stars, they bring over superstars, and they have ruined every single one of them. Joe Johnson, they ruined him. You brought over guys, for example, like Darren Williams. He wanted to quit basketball because of you. I mean, when it comes to Brooklyn, it's about the culture. And most people don't believe me, Andre, when I say this, but culture is the most important aspect of sports. And it starts from the top. If you do not have culture from the top, your rest of your team's going to be crap.
That's true. Very, very true. Speaking knowledge, facts. Amen. Preach.
Oh, somebody in our chat, by the way, said, I will take Brooklyn's $500,000 if they want to give it to me.
Who wouldn't? I'll take it too.
Yeah, I'll take that. You know, they're $5, like you said. You know, I'll take their $5.
Damn right. I'll take it in a heartbeat.
Now, getting into the main part of tonight's episode, NFL Week 9 discussion, doing our NFL Week 9 picks here on the show. Now, I go based off the spread because I am in Las Vegas, the sportsbook capital of the world. Now, you can do straight up if you want. That is perfectly okay with me. But I just want to set that for everyone watching around the world. Now, The first matchup is a NFC West versus NFC West matchup, and that's the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Now, according to FanDuel, Arizona is a 1.5-point favorite at home in Phoenix. So, Andre, let me ask you this. Arizona really hasn't been dominant. Seattle's been a surprise story of 2022. Geno Smith has had a career resurgence ever since going back to Seattle. So, who do you have winning this matchup? Seattle, Arizona, being played in Phoenix, and why?
I don't care if it's in Phoenix. Who cares if it's in Phoenix? The Arizona Cardinals is the Phoenix Suns of the NFL, first and foremost. And that's being nice because the Phoenix Suns actually were really, really good last year. Arizona, I told you last year, Arizona was a bunch of pretenders. I'm going to tell you it again. They're a bunch of pretenders this year. I'm taking the team that everybody thought was only going to win 3 games this year. And aren't they the division leaders right now, the Seattle Seahawks?
Your division leader, Seattle Seahawks, out there in Washington.
Who would have ever predicted after 9 weeks the Seattle Seahawks leading that division with the Rams, the 49ers, and the Cardinals? Nobody. I bet you
not even Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson wouldn't have seen it.
Right. Come on. There's slim pickings on that. I mean, Russell Wilson leaving the team has made Seattle better. Ain't that interesting? I'm taking Seattle, and it's real clear. Defense playing good. Geno's playing good. Kudos to the Seattle Seahawks, by the way. Round of applause.
Yeah, round of applause for Seattle, absolutely. Shout out to them bringing back Bruce Irvin, by the way. Bruce Irvin, one of the original Legion of Boom out there in Seattle, being brought back to Seattle. That was recently announced, so good for him. So I'm going to go with Seattle here. Give me the plus 1.5. And, you brought up a good point. It doesn't matter if it was being played at Lemon Field in Seattle or being played at State Farm Stadium out there in Arizona. It doesn't matter. Seattle has a better defense, and they really have a better, trustworthy quarterback in Geno Smith. So many people don't want to acknowledge Geno Smith, and we'll talk about this later in the show, but so many people have really disregarded and kind of put away Geno Smith because of what happened with New York. And as somebody who did like Geno Smith early on, I'm actually happy to see him being successful in Seattle. What about you, Andre? I mean, Geno Smith being successful in Seattle, that's been one of the feel-good stories of this year. Because you have that whole situation where it's like, Geno Smith was a really good quarterback and someone that really was dealt a bad hand by going to a terrible Jets team with no culture. He goes to the Giants, was a backup quarterback for them. Now he has settled in Seattle. So I'm very happy to see what Geno Smith is doing, and I will take Seattle plus 1.5 when it comes to that game. So I give a lot of credit to Geno Smith, and I think what he's doing is incredible. Now, the next matchup here, doing our NFL Week 9 discussion on the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. We're going to be having a matchup here that some people probably weren't going to imagine, but has been a really good situation. And that is going down to Atlanta because you have the Los Angeles Chargers. They're going to be going down to Atlanta to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and they're going to be taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Now, you have an interesting case because Los Angeles is a wild card team in the AFC. Los Angeles is an organization who has actually been able to win certain games that they should have, but they've also lost some games that they shouldn't have. And then on the opposite effect, you have Atlanta, who, when they're not choking games away, has kept it close all year long. When Atlanta is not choking games away, they kept it, close when it came to the LA. They kept it close when it came to Tampa Bay. Atlanta has been able to make their games closer than they should be, and I'm actually very happy to see that. So, we'll get Andre in a second, but when it comes to Tampa Bay versus versus Atlanta, when it comes to the Chargers versus Atlanta, I'm actually going to keep it very simple. I'm going to take the Atlanta Falcons. Give me the +3 in this matchup. So regardless if it's a field goal or regardless if it's a touchdown, I'm going to take Atlanta in this matchup. I will take them over the LA Chargers, and you're going to be seeing the Atlanta Falcons battling it out with Carolina, battling it out with Tampa Bay, battling it out with New Orleans for the best record in the worst division in the NFL, the NFC South. By the way, who would have thought that in this season, in 2022, that the NFC South would be the worst division in all of football? Who would have guessed that the NFC South with Tom Brady in it, an NFC South with Jameis Winston in it, Alvin Kamara, they would be the worst division in all of football? Who would have guessed? Now, also, you also have in this Week 9 discussion, there is a matchup that some people are going to consider an upset. I am going to be considering it a matchup you have to watch out for. Now, the Baltimore Ravens are going to take on the New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football. And Baltimore right now, according to FanDuel, is a 2.5-point favorite in this game. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, Baltimore with Harbaugh, with all the talent that Baltimore has, including Roquan Smith, who they acquired from the Chicago Bears. This is a Baltimore Ravens team that looks good. But yet, having a -2.5, that makes me question Baltimore. Only being 2.5 against a New Orleans Saints team makes you question why it's only 2.5. Why is a team that's leading the AFC North, a team who has put up impressive wins like last week against Tampa Bay, how have they managed to only go up and get certain amount of, to get certain amount of games and certain amount of things that have been happening? Kind of makes you question what's going on. So, because of all of the question marks surrounding this game, I'm actually going to go with an upset here. I'm going to take New Orleans Saints plus 2.5 to win this game. I will go with the New Orleans Saints led by Andy Dalton, led by Taysom Hill, the New Orleans Saints team whose defense is questionable, but shut down the Las Vegas Raiders, who we'll talk about later. New Orleans plus 2.5 is my pick against Baltimore. And, I can't really talk about the Buffalo Bills because they're on a bye week. I can't, talk about how they're the Super Bowl favorite to win this year. I can't really get into detail about how the Buffalo Bills should win the Super Bowl this year. So instead, we're going to move on to a matchup that's going to surprise people. And definitely the odds makers surprised me on this one. The Cincinnati Bengals are a 7-point favorite over Carolina. Cincinnati being a touchdown favorite over the Carolina Panthers is a bit surprising to me. The Cincinnati Bengals have not been dominant at all in 2022. And Carolina, ever since they fired Matt Rule, has not been a joke the past 2 weeks. Carolina actually looks like a playoff contender in 2022. So because of how good Carolina has looked since firing Matt Rule, because the Carolina Panthers look better than what Cincinnati has done over the entire 8-week span, and Jamar Chase being out, that's not going to help Cincinnati either. Carolina plus 7 will be my pick. That's right, folks. I will take Carolina plus 7 because, you know what? Worst case scenario, Cincinnati wins by a field goal. I still win. Best case scenario, Carolina wins the game and I end up winning. So I will put this out here right now. I will put Carolina plus 7 in this situation. Whereas Cincinnati does not look good to me at all. Cincinnati looks actually a little bit inferior at the moment. So give me Carolina plus 7. Now the next matchup is close to home. Next matchup is one where so many people are going to say that I should go one way. That because I am a Chicago Bears fan, because I'm a lifelong Bears fan, them being a 4.5-point underdog in this matchup, I should take Chicago plus 4.5, right? I should take the Chicago Bears plus 4.5 because this could be a field goal game. But then you realize who they're playing. You realize who the Chicago Bears are having to go up against this week. And if you assume and you make an assumption Chicago can keep it close against this team, I have one player that will ruin that entire argument. Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is trying to break Calvin Johnson's record right now. Tyreek Hill has been the most dominant wide receiver in the NFL, really not just this year, but next year, the next year afterwards. More importantly, this has also been the Tyreek Hill that was dominant in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes and then converted it over to Tua Tagovailoa. So, if you really believe that they could go plus 4.5, I'm going to call you out. I think that is actually ridiculous. So I'm going to take Miami minus 4.5. And similar to what happened against Dallas last week, I do not expect Chicago to keep this close. I think Chicago is going to be embarrassed by Tua. Chicago is going to be embarrassed by Tyreek Hill, by Jalen Waddle, by Jeff Wilson. The Miami Dolphins went out and got better on defense by bringing in Bradley Chubb from Denver. So I'm taking Miami minus 4.5 to beat Chicago. And for all people who just got here or people watching around the world, I will repeat what my picks have been in week 9 so far. I picked the Seattle Seahawks plus 1.5 to beat Arizona. I'm going with Atlanta to beat LA plus 3. I will pick New Orleans in an upset over Baltimore. Give me New Orleans plus 2.5. I have Carolina beating Cincinnati. I'm taking Carolina plus 7 here. And then I have the Miami Dolphins beating the Chicago Bears minus 4.5. Hey, Thomas, I appreciate you being in the chat, by the way. I want to give a huge shout out to Thomas for always watching the show, sharing it, giving, letting people watch this show. So I definitely appreciate what you're doing. Also, shout out to your Philadelphia Phillies, by the way, who are going to win this series. I said it all along that I have the Phillies winning in 7 games. I have Philadelphia led by Las Vegas favorite Bryce Harper, led by Las Vegas UNLV graduate Bryson Stout. They will do what's best for business, and they will beat Houston in Houston. And somebody just asked, what about those Eagles that are 8-0 so far? They're legit. Back when I did my NFL predictions video, I had the Philadelphia Eagles winning the NFC East. However, I had Philadelphia going 11-6. I had Philadelphia win the division, but I did not expect them to be as dominant as they are now. But when you have a legit number 1 in A.J. Brown, when you have one of the best defenses in the NFL, and you also have a franchise quarterback in the making in Jalen Hurts, it's very similar to Arizona last year. It was very similar to Pittsburgh 2 years ago. They will go 8-0. They will go 9-0. They'll go 10-0. And then eventually there will be a team that will come along, right? I want everyone to hear this out. There will be a team that will come along in the NFL season that will want it more than Philadelphia does. In the NFL, there's always going to be that one matchup where the team that has nothing to lose will try harder than the team that's undefeated. It was very similar to 2009 when the Indianapolis Colts went up against the New York Jets. The Jets needed to get into the playoffs that year, and they beat the Colts, snapping their undefeated streak. Or in 2011, when the Green Bay Packers took on the Detroit Lions, and the Detroit Lions, who were trying to get into a playoff spot, wanted it more. So when you really sit back and analyze it, Philadelphia will lose at some point this year. I don't think they're going to go 18-0. But what will happen is that Philadelphia will face off against a team that wants it more than Philadelphia. And because they want it more and they want it bad enough, they will try their absolute hardest to beat Philadelphia. They'll put up all the stops. They will do everything they can to beat Philadelphia. Thomas, you say that you don't want Philadelphia to go undefeated. Well, you know what? I need to bring you on the show sometime because the Philadelphia Eagles would be a conversation we could have for an entire hour here on the Sports Angle. I honestly believe that would be a great discussion to talk about. And the Tennessee Titans is its matchup that you think could happen. It's fascinating you say that because I actually had somebody else. When you actually discuss the Philadelphia Eagles schedule, you say Tennessee, but the person I actually have is someone very different, and I will explain why I have them beating Philadelphia. The team that I have beating Philadelphia would actually be the New York Giants. Because the New York Giants, around that point, correct me if I'm wrong, Thomas, that will be around week 14, correct? So week 14, the New York Giants, they're going to be in playoff contention mode. Once again, back to my point. Because the New York Giants are going to be trying to make the playoffs, because the New York Giants are going to be trying to be a playoff team in 2022, they are going to be putting out all the stops against Philadelphia. So I could see a situation where the New York Giants go out and they try to beat Philadelphia. I could also see New Orleans in week 17, because by week 17, you're going to see who's towards the top of the standings in the NFC South. So the New Orleans Saints could be that team that goes out and plays a lot harder than what Philadelphia will be by that point. So New Orleans in week 17, New York in week 14, those are two matchups that I really believe could be done against Philadelphia. The rest of them, I actually don't see. Washington, they're in a huge disarray right now. It's not going to be done. Indianapolis, they have a rookie quarterback. It's not going to be accomplished. Green Bay is in shambles. And honestly, Green Bay does not know what it's doing at this point. Beating Philadelphia is unlikely. I would say Tennessee, Thomas, if I didn't trust the quarterback situation. The Tennessee Titans, that quarterback situation is very questionable. Week 15, they go up against Chicago. Chicago's in full rebuild mode. They're in tanking mode. I don't see them doing that. Dallas in week 16, that sounds nice, but you have to remember Dallas versus Philadelphia. We have seen what the results have been. I would lean towards Dallas in that favor. And then week 18 against New York, once again, that could be playoff battles. That could be for a playoff spot. So New York or New Orleans are two teams that I really sit back and go, yeah, they could definitely beat Philadelphia if they have to. You know what, Thomas? I actually disagree. I disagree. We definitely need to bring you on the show sometime. It's been a while since I brought you on. But Jordan Davis being lost by Philadelphia actually doesn't hurt him that much. And the reason why is because Philadelphia has actually a lot of momentum and a lot of strength on their defensive four. Their defensive front in Philadelphia is actually one of the best in the NFL. So yes, him being hurt should negatively affect the Philadelphia Eagles, but then when you remember the depth chart and the fact that they actually have a good amount of talent in that front out there on their defense, I actually disagree with you. I actually believe that's not going to affect them as much negatively as it should if they didn't have a good strength on depth for Philadelphia. Because you have Brandon Graham, you have Fletcher Cox, you have Hargrave, you have Sweat, you brought over Robert Quinn from Chicago. I think you also have Derek Barnett, if I remember correctly. I think he's still there. So the Philadelphia Eagles have 5 or 6 guys on that front four that they can put in at any moment out there in Philadelphia. So I think losing Jordan Davis would be a hiccup if they didn't have the depth that Philadelphia has. And I also will get back to our picks here on the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. The Cleveland Browns are on a bye week alongside Buffalo, so really nothing to go over there. And same with Dallas. Interesting enough, Dallas, a team I love to make fun of here on this show, they're on a bye week. Really nothing I can say about them at the moment. And unfortunately, the same can be said for Denver. They're on a bye week too, so I can't make a Broncos country let's ride joke. But one team I can make a joke about, and a one team that, my guest I was really going to make fun of here on the show tonight, and that was the Green Bay Packers. Man, the Green Bay Packers. What a joke, huh? What an absolute joke the Green Bay Packers have become. The Green Bay Packers being a 3.5-point favorite is not surprising. Green Bay being on the road as a 3.5-point favorite is not surprising. And them going up against Detroit and being a favorite is not surprising. What is surprising is that the Green Bay Packers have been terrible against bad teams. This is a Green Bay Packers organization who lost to Washington when they shouldn't have. This is a Green Bay Packers team that has phoned it in time and time again. Green Bay should not be 2 games below 500 looking at their schedule. But sure enough, here they are. There's also a Green Bay Packers team that has lost 4 games in a row on their East Coast swing. They went up against New Jersey, the Giants and the Jets, lost both times. They go down to Washington, D.C., lose there. They go up to Western New York. They go up to Buffalo, lose there. Green Bay is a joke, and I'm happy to see it. Green Bay failing against the New York teams was a smile to my face. And here's my prediction for Week 9. I am taking Detroit to win this matchup. I am taking Detroit plus 3.5. Because the Green Bay Packers, even though Detroit has looked like a joke, Green Bay is a bigger joke than what Detroit is right now. Green Bay is dysfunctional. Green Bay is delusional. And Green Bay can't do anything on offense, and their defense has to carry the load. If you are a Green Bay Packers fan, I don't feel bad for you. If you are a Detroit Lions fan, I feel bad for you. If you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, win the division, please. If you're a Chicago Bears fan, well, you know what? I'll give you more whiskey, but you probably already have some in your liquor cabinet. So, when it comes to Green Bay, it comes to Detroit, I will take Detroit plus 3.5. That will be my pick for this week, is that you will have the Green Bay Packers go 3-6 in 2022. And just like Thomas says in the chat, if Aaron Rodgers retires after this year, I agree with you, Thomas. Aaron Rodgers will retire this year, and so will Tom Brady. For the first time in 18 years, you are not going to have an NFL with Tom Brady. You're going to have an NFL with no Aaron Rodgers. So, discussing all of that, I really have to break it down. When it comes to Green Bay, I do not feel sorry for you. I laugh at your misery because for so many years, you have made Bears fans suffer. So Bears fans finally get to see you suffer for once. Now, moving on to the next game here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. I can't talk about Philadelphia and Houston because that's a game that already happened. By the way, if you did Philadelphia minus 13.5, you would have lost that game because Philadelphia only won by 12. So for all people who will do bet on Thursday Night Football on Amazon that no one gets to see, if you do bet on those games, just keep in mind Philadelphia won that game, but you lost if you took Philadelphia minus 13.5. If you took Houston, you actually would have won the game. So interesting enough how that goes. So unless you pick straight up Philadelphia, you shouldn't have picked them on Thursday. Now, back to our conversation doing our NFL Week 9 picks here on Sports Angle at PR Connections Radio. You have the Las Vegas Raiders, 2.5-point favorite, going into Jacksonville to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. You have two teams who unfortunately have nothing to play for. You have two teams who are 2-5, 2-6 respectively. And, Jacksonville, they're not going to be competing for a division title. The Raiders won't be competing for a division title. So what's there really to discuss about this game? What is there to really go after when it goes to this organization and what they do as a group? Now, that being said, we are in Las Vegas, Nevada, the sports entertainment capital of the world, the sports betting capital of the world. So I will take the Las Vegas Raiders and Jacksonville over them. So FanDuel has Las Vegas as a 2.5-point favorite in this game. Give me Las Vegas minus 2.5 to beat Jacksonville. And Thomas, the only reason why I can't really side with Jacksonville is because of the bust they have at quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. The reason why I really can't side with Jacksonville is because they don't have a good quarterback out there in Jacksonville. They just don't. The Jacksonville Jaguars have a guy who won't make the right decisions late in the game. So because Jacksonville has a bust as a quarterback, I'm going to go with the Las Vegas Raiders. Give me minus 2.5 for the Las Vegas Raiders in this matchup. So the next game, moving on over, you have the Los Angeles Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You have Tampa Bay, who is a 3-point favorite in this matchup. And oddly enough, I'm picking Tampa Bay here, but not for the reason you expect. I am picking Tampa Bay because LA has a Super Bowl hangover. LA has a Super Bowl hangover that they still can't get over. People have been talking about Cincinnati. Everyone doesn't want to pay attention to LA and how bad LA has been. The Rams' offense has been dysfunctional. Their defense been lacking. And when you have to go out and you have to do trick plays, when you got to go out and you have to do a bunch of different formations and a bunch of audibles every single play, all it tells me is that the LA Rams don't have confidence in their lacking of offense, that they have to resort to 5-yard shutdown passes. So give me Tampa Bay. Give me the field goal here for Tampa Bay. Now, as we are talking about the NFL here on Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, this next matchup, I'm going to be honest, I don't want to talk about it. There is really no use for me talking about this matchup, but yet I need to discuss it. Right now, the Minnesota Vikings are a 3-point favorite against Washington. And even though Washington should lose this matchup, part of me feels like this is a trap game. A part of your host, Ian Rickelli, truly believes that Minnesota will somehow lose against Washington. And because of that reason, that is why I will pick Washington +3 in this matchup. It's a reason why I would confidently say that Taylor Heinicke will outperform Kirk Cousins. Antonio Gibson and the running game in Washington will outperform Dalvin Cook. So give me Washington +3. Should be a fantastic game, but I really just don't want to talk about it. There really isn't much to discuss. Losing Von Miller hurt that defense. You are absolutely right. Von Miller did hurt that defense out there in LA. Him going to Buffalo not only secured Buffalo a Super Bowl, but it also damaged LA. And in a roundabout way, it also damaged Denver as well. Denver's defense has not been as good as what it was when Von Miller was there. Now we have 4 matchups left that we have to get over. So the Indianapolis Colts, New England Patriots. According to FanDuel, the Patriots are a 5.5-point favorite. I will take Indianapolis +5.5. Week 9 is what I consider upset city. Upset city. You know, it's really unfortunate that the New England Patriots have to go down the road I'm saying they're going to go down, but it's going to happen. Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones being the carousel at quarterback is not going to cut it. You know, it's a situation where, you know, unfortunately, the Bill Belichick era is not going to go out on a blaze of glory. Instead, it's going to go out like a house being burnt to the ground and Bill Belichick standing in the middle of it. Patriots dynasty is over. Boston and Foxborough is now going to have to suffer again. And whoever they bring in to replace Belichick is going to have to start over from scratch. And most football fans are not going to feel bad. Most football fans are not going to feel sorry for Bill Belichick. Most football fans are not going to be apologetic to the Patriots when they start losing. No one's going to feel empathy for New England for losing. Because you've been making teams lose for 15 plus years. No one feels sorry for you. So give me Indianapolis +5.5. Now, moving on to the next matchup, and I really wish there was somebody here that I could discuss this with, and that is the New York Jets, and that is the equation that they're going at right now, because you have a situation where you are going to have Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. You're going to have a bunch of players that are going to be playing, you know, in these matchups. So the Buffalo Bills being an 11.5-point favorite presented to you by FanDuel, that is going to be a win out in Buffalo. The New York Jets are not going to be able to stand with Buffalo. Buffalo is going to lap New York. They're going to expose Zach Wilson. So I'm going to take Buffalo. Give me the -11.5. And I say this will be a 2-touchdown game. Because Buffalo is not going to lose to New York. All right, New Jersey is not going to beat Buffalo. They're not going to beat the 2022 Super Bowl champions. So as we're doing our NFL Week 9 discussion here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, like I said, we have 2 games left. I need to get into them now. And that one is the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Tennessee Titans. Kansas City, 12.5-point favorite, going up against Tennessee. I'm going to keep this very simple. I say that this will be a 2-touchdown game as well. Kansas City will expose Malik Willis. It will expose Ryan Tannehill. It doesn't matter who you have on offense. Kansas City's better. Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes are better as a result than what Tennessee has. So give me Kansas City. Give me 11.5. Now, I'm going to go over the picks one more time for all people watching around the world. I have Atlanta beating LA. Give me +3. I have Buffalo beating New York, -11. I have Miami beating Chicago, -4.5. I am taking Washington to beat Minnesota, +3. I have Detroit beating Green Bay, +3. I have Indianapolis beating New England, +5.5. I have Carolina beating Cincinnati, +7. I will take Las Vegas to beat Jacksonville, -2.5. Give me Seattle, +1.5 over Arizona. I have Tampa Bay beating the reigning champions, beating LA, -3. Kansas City will beat Tennessee, -12.5. And then finally, New Orleans will pull off the upset. They will beat Baltimore. Give me +2.5. I want to know from all people watching around the world if you agree or disagree with that situation. Because you have Baltimore and you have New Orleans, and that is the fact that is going down. You have a situation where New Orleans beating up on Baltimore going to be best for business. And for all people watching around the world, I want to very quickly talk about what has happened to Green Bay. Because I briefly mentioned it towards the beginning of the show, but I really want to get into detail as to why Green Bay has been so terrible. Because the Green Bay Packers organization should be better on paper. Green Bay should be having a better organization and a better situation as a result. And when it comes to Green Bay, you have a situation where you have Aaron Rodgers, who is going to be crying and moaning and groaning. And Aaron Rodgers has no one to blame but himself for this. Aaron Rodgers went out and, I want this team to be about me, but also make me one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. I want this team to be focused on me, but I also want you to get me a receiver in the first round so you can surround me with talent. This is a team, Aaron Rodgers. It's not about you. This organization is not the Aaron Rodgers show. Instead, this is an organization that is built on legacy. This is an organization who is built off of legends and Hall of Famers. It's not about you. So, going over the rest of the schedule for Green Bay, is it plausible to say it'll go 6-11? Is it possible that Green Bay could finish behind Chicago in the standings? Because when you do a deep dive, after Detroit, they got to go up against Dallas. Good freaking luck. Dallas is going to expose Green Bay for the fraud that they are. Next week, they got to go up against Tennessee. Tennessee actually has a better roster than Green Bay does. Philadelphia, that's going to be a win for Philadelphia. You go up against Chicago, your annual beating of your younger brother. And then the next week after, you go up against the Super Bowl champion LA Rams. Before the Super Bowl hangover, I would have easily gone to LA. But because of the hangover that LA has, it actually could be a closer game. Maybe they could actually win that one. Miami, absolutely not. Minnesota, absolutely not. And Detroit, well, week 18, we'll see what they already do. So you have Green Bay, who is nothing but a bunch of frauds, and they're going to get exposed again against Dallas. They're going to get exposed again by Philadelphia. The Green Bay Packers have no one to blame but themselves, because Aaron Rodgers made it all about himself and not about the team. So, as somebody who watches the Green Bay Packers and someone who watches the NFC North every single week, all I'm going to point out to you is when it comes to Green Bay, I don't feel sorry for you. I am not empathetic to you. I do not want to be apologetic to you. Green Bay, you did this by feeding the baby and by giving Aaron Rodgers whatever he wanted. Instead of moving on from Aaron Rodgers and giving it over to Jordan Love, you kept him around. So, once again, I will take Detroit. I will take +3, by the way, in this matchup against Green Bay because I don't trust Aaron Rodgers at this point. Their running game, non-existent. Their receiving core, what receiving core? Tight ends, non-existent. And your offensive line has actually been becoming a little bit of a joke lately in Green Bay. So, when you're talking about Green Bay, what has happened to them? Simple. Aaron Rodgers is what happened to them. His ego is what happened to Green Bay. Now, the Las Vegas Raiders, we're going to talk about Las Vegas now. They're 2-5 on the year. And there's so many people here in Las Vegas. So many people in Las Vegas that are wondering what's wrong. What is the problem with Las Vegas? Well, the main issue with Las Vegas is you have a guy who's their quarterback who you can't trust. Derek Carr has become a liability for Las Vegas. Derek Carr, who is, by the way, one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL right now, in terms of total salary, Derek Carr is in the top 5. Derek Carr, in terms of base salary, is one of the highest paid in the entire NFL. But you wouldn't know that if you watched him play. You would not know that Derek Carr has been with the Las Vegas Raiders for 8 whole seasons by watching him play. Because Derek Carr does not look like a veteran. People were talking earlier this year about would they or would they not let go of Derek Carr? Would they move on from Derek Carr and would they replace him with somebody younger? Would they let go of their 8-year veteran and bring in somebody who actually would understand Josh McDaniels' system? Well, regardless, Josh McDaniels being hired was an absolute, what kind of move. But Derek Carr, I said this last year, and I said it earlier this offseason, I'll say it again. Derek Carr is past due when it comes to being a quarterback for the Raiders. Being a quarterback in Las Vegas, you normally last 2 or 3 years max. Derek Carr has been here for 8 whole seasons. Doesn't matter if you were Rich Gannon. Didn't matter if you were Charlie Fry, Brad Gronkowski. It didn't matter if you were Jason Campbell. It didn't matter if you were Terrell Pryor. It didn't matter if you were Connor Cook, Matt McLaurin. It didn't matter who you were. As a Raiders quarterback, before Derek Carr showed up, you only lasted 2 or 3 years tops, and then you went someplace else. Carson Palmer, for example. Carson Palmer was one heck of a quarterback, and the Raiders got rid of him after a few seasons. All you have to do is look up Raiders quarterbacks and see how little amount of time the Raiders kept their quarterbacks. Because the Las Vegas Raiders, or the Oakland Raiders back then, They did not keep quarterbacks for long until he showed up. As a matter of fact, I have it right here. Carson Palmer, 2 seasons. Terrell Pryor, 2 seasons. Matt Flynn, 1 year. You had EJ Manuel for 1 year. You had Jamarcus Russell for 2 whole years. You had Josh McCown for 1 year. Dante Culpepper for 1 year. You had Jason Campbell for a whopping 1 year. It's a situation where you go, the Raiders before Derek Carr was well known as the team that you went to for a while and then they moved on. This was an organization that they had you as your quarterback for a while. They got as much as they could out of you, and then they shipped you back out and you went someplace else. So Derek Carr really did not follow the pattern. The Raiders really did not follow a pattern with Derek Carr. They have had him play for Las Vegas for 9 seasons now. Once again, like I said, the last quarterback to spend more than 4 seasons for Las Vegas before then actually was Rich Gannon, and Rich Gannon was there for a whopping 6 years, from 1999 to 2004. But even then, they actually swapped him out for Rick Meyer and Kerry Collins. So, Derek Carr should have been gone. That's the point of it. You also have a situation. Oh, and by the way, the person who put out this comment, you're 1,000% right. The Giants already exposed Green Bay. The Jets already exposed Green Bay. I'm happy to see that. The main problem with the Raiders is that there are too many overpaid players. That's egos getting in the way of playing. They are not playing as a team. You are 100% right. Also, how did that turning down that 5th-year extension for Josh Jacobs looking for you, Raiders? Tell me, how is that looking for you? Because Josh Jacobs now has become one of the best running backs in the NFL this year. Has anybody seen the stats for Josh Jacobs this year? Has anyone noticed that ever since they turned down that 5th-year option, he is 7th in attempts, 5th in yards, 4th in touchdowns? I mean, Josh Jacobs already has 6 rushing touchdowns, and it's not even halfway through the year yet. By the way, with it being 18 weeks, this season, by the way, would technically be the halfway point. But Josh Jacobs having 6 touchdowns this year, he had 9 last year, he had 12 the year before. I find it really fascinating how the Raiders turned down Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option. He has an excellent year, no doubt about it. Josh Jacobs is going to get paid handsomely to go someplace else. Because Josh Jacobs is not that old by now. He's only 24 years old. Josh Jacobs at 24 years old has had 4 seasons where Josh Jacobs has been phenomenal. I mean, this is a guy who had 1 year below 1,000 yards and decided to decline his 5th-year option. So the Raiders messed up by keeping Derek Carr for too long. The Raiders messed up by turning down the 5th-year option for Josh Jacobs. And the Raiders messed up by not focusing on Davante Adams. As a matter of fact, I'm going to address this real quick. Has anyone noticed that Davante Adams is getting less and less targets every single week? Has anyone been paying attention to the fact that Davante Adams, the guy who was the best receiver in the NFL, has only 38 catches on the year? I mean, Davante Adams has less catches than 21 different receivers in the NFL. I mean, it's insane to think about the fact that when it comes to Davante Adams, he had 1 catch against New Orleans. Davante Adams was a guy who had 10 catches against LA, 9 catches against Denver, 8 catches against Houston. But when they've had to go up against better teams, they have not given him the ball. Against Arizona, he only had 2 catches. When he went up against Kansas City, only had a trio of catches. When he went up against New Orleans, had 1 catch. Davante Adams, by the way, only had 2 plays where the ball was in his hands against New Orleans. Keep in mind, this was also the same Davante Adams who has had 10 against Denver and 10 against LA. This guy's had 41, once again, 41 times he's had the ball in his hands with Las Vegas. 41 times. And before anybody asks, why is that a big deal? Just look at the amount of receptions the other receivers are having in the NFL, and it's actually quite glaring. Tyreek Hill has 69 catches already. Stephon Diggs has 55. Justin Jefferson, 52. Even in Kansas City, Travis Kelce has 47. Man, check this out. Jamar Chase, despite him being injured, has 47 catches. Davante Adams has 41. Davante Adams has less catches than Curtis Samuel, has less catches than Tyler Lockett, has less catches than Michael Pittman. So yes, people are going to look at the amount of touchdowns Davante Adams has, and they're going to be fooled by it. They're going to go, well, he's had 5 touchdowns this year. Yeah, he's only had 41 catches so far. And Davante Adams is only barely above 500 receiving yards. This is in the same league where Stephon Diggs is over 760, Tyreek Hill at 960, Justin Jefferson over 750. Those are the elite receivers in the NFL, and Davante Adams is below all of them. So, Las Vegas, why did you bring in Davante Adams? Why did you trade for Davante Adams, pay him a lot of money, and not use him effectively? I really want people in Vegas to justify that for me. Because most people have not been able to do that. Most people have not been able to tell me why they brought in Davante Adams and yet are not using him correctly. Because if I'm the Las Vegas Raiders, I am giving Davante Adams the ball 10 times regardless of what happens. If I was the Las Vegas Raiders, I am making sure that Davante Adams gets the ball as much as humanly possible. You know, to me, it's just a situation where you look at it and go, you know, Davante Adams has 41. Mac Hollins has 26. Darren Waller, by the way, who is one of the highest paid tight ends in the NFL, 16 catches, 1 touchdown, under 200 yards receiving. Hunter Renfrow, under 20 catches, 0 touchdowns. So, the Las Vegas Raiders have stalled on offense. They are not effective on offense, and it really starts from Derek Carr. Josh Jacobs, should it be extended? They're not going to do it. Davante Adams, they've ruined him. Hunter Renfrow, not using him enough. Darren Waller, they're not using him enough when he's playing. And that offensive line. Hey, all Raiders fans, you're going to get mad at me now. But remember when I told you that if you didn't have an offensive line, you were going to kill somebody? If you didn't have an offensive line, Derek Carr was gonna cause problems. Well, sure enough, he is going to cause problems. I mean, has anybody noticed that Derek Carr has fumbled pretty often now? I mean, this is the same guy in Derek Carr who has 9 touchdowns to 6 turnovers. He also has been sacked 17 times this season. Now, when it comes to Las Vegas, I also want to talk about their defense real quick because I pulled up the analytics to back up this argument. And it's astonishing how Max Crosby, you've had 9 sacks this season. Max Crosby has had 6 of those sacks. All right, Las Vegas, you spent all of this money. Las Vegas, you went out and spent and gave contract extensions to Max Crosby. You went out and got Chandler Jones. You traded Yannick Ngakoue for Rock Ya-Sin. And yet, Max Crosby has 6 of the 9 sacks you've had all year. That is a joke. For anybody who doesn't know, that is second to last in the NFL. Second to last for a team that spent money this offseason on defense. Denzel Perryman and Nate Hobbs are the only other ones who have a sack, by the way, and that's 1 sack each. So Max Crosby has 6 of your 9 sacks. Also, anyone who wants to point this out, why is it that your safety has one of the most tackles on your entire organization? It's not your linebacker. It's not your defensive end. No, it's your safety who is wrapping people up the most for your organization. I mean, you have a team that can barely get to the quarterback. By the way, Max Crosby has 12 of your 22 tackles for a loss. For anybody who doesn't know, that is absolutely terrible, by the way. That he has half of your tackles for a loss. 1 player on your team. So as I'm rambling here about the Las Vegas Raiders in order to fill time, I'm going to say once again, you overpaid for your defense. They haven't produced. You paid for a receiver. You're not using him properly. You have a quarterback who's one of the highest paid in the NFL, and he is not producing like he needs to be. And you decided not to pay a running back who's going to get paid top dollar this offseason. Thomas, I'm going to give it 1 or 2 more years. Davante Adams will be gone. I will not blame him when he does. I will not blame Davante Adams if he leaves. I won't. Understand that when it comes to Davante Adams, would you stay in Las Vegas? Like, let's be blunt. Would you stay in Las Vegas if you're seeing Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson being treated like legit number 1 wide receivers, and yet you only have 41 catches halfway through the year? I mean, a lot of people don't want to talk about that, but it's insane to me how Tyreek Hill gets all of these opportunities in Miami, and yet a guy like Davante Adams has to struggle to get the ball in Las Vegas. I mean, Tyreek Hill has had 74 catches this season. That is 33 more than what Davante Adams has. Derek Carr has the same problem as David Carr did. He thought he was the whole team. Look, Derek Carr is a nice guy. All right, I've been around Derek Carr. I know who Derek Carr is. I've met people who know Derek Carr. Yes, he is a stand-up guy. But do we bring people to your team because they're a stand-up guy? Do you keep a quarterback around for 8 seasons because they're a nice guy? Or do you keep a quarterback around for 8 years because they can win you a football game? Do you keep a quarterback around for 8 years because they've gotten you past the first round? By the way, Raiders fans, that's another thing that I want to talk about real quick. Everyone talks about Derek Carr getting to the playoffs twice. But Derek Carr has never made it past the wild card round. Derek Carr has been 0-1 in his playoff games. I mean, Derek Carr has not been a success in Las Vegas. As much as people want you to think he has been a success, he has not won a playoff game in 8 whole seasons with the Raiders. So why did they keep bringing him back? I was actually surprised they brought him back when Josh McDaniels took over. So if you're a Raiders fan, here's my advice to you. And I really hope somebody really takes this in. I really hope that somebody listens to what I'm saying and they grasp what I'm trying to point out here. If I am the Las Vegas Raiders, here's what I'm doing. A, I am drafting someone in the draft next year. 2, I am going to go and grab a quarterback from the free agent market. Or 3, I will make a trade and acquire a backup quarterback from somebody in the NFL and make them my starting quarterback. Because a lot of people really don't understand that the Las Vegas Raiders are in an opportunity right now that they could actually benefit themselves. The Las Vegas Raiders, you have Derek Carr, that's fine, but you need to go out and get a quarterback in the draft. Maybe get someone like C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. Oh, isn't that an idea, folks? C.J. Stroud is one of the highest touted quarterback prospects in the draft next year. If you're the Las Vegas Raiders, why not take advantage of it and draft him to be in Las Vegas? Maybe go out and get a quarterback like Tyler Huntley from Baltimore and bring him over to Las Vegas. Who knows? Maybe bring over Geno Smith because he's been such a good feel-good story in Seattle. Bring him over to Las Vegas and make him a good name. Or if you want to go the cheap route, bring in someone like Drew Lock, who's a backup in Seattle, and make him come to Las Vegas. Well, you know what? I'm going to toss one more in here just because I can. How about Mark Davis opens the vault one more time and they bring in Lamar Jackson from Baltimore? There's so many opportunities for these organizations. There is so much potential for Las Vegas next offseason, and yet they're not going to do it. They're not going to go out and they're not going to capitalize on the opportunity next offseason. What Las Vegas is probably going to do is, because they are loyal, they're going to keep Derek Carr for year 10, bring in a backup quarterback who knows Josh McDaniels or knows the head coach of the Raiders, and they will try to convince themselves that they are okay this far. But I want to know from everyone watching around the world, if you are the Las Vegas Raiders, if you're a general manager, what do you do next offseason? Do you A, keep Derek Carr and pretend that everything's all right? B, you go after the biggest name in free agency and you sign Lamar Jackson to the biggest deal for an NFL quarterback? C, do you go to the NFL draft and do you draft C.J. Stroud because you're going to have a high enough pick that you could go get him in the draft next year? Or do you do the safe pick and do you call up Baltimore? Do you call up Seattle? And do you trade for a backup quarterback and make them your starter in Las Vegas? Because Las Vegas has options next year. I just want to know which one you believe they're going to do. Because Las Vegas, I don't know how many years you can keep on telling yourself Derek Carr is the answer. Now, why do you think Carr's not throwing to Adams? I think Josh McDaniels' play style. That's why. I think Josh McDaniels' play style is one of the worst I've seen in football. Straight up. Josh McDaniels did not learn a lesson from his time in Denver. Josh McDaniels did not learn from his mistakes with the St. Louis Rams. And Josh McDaniels clearly did not learn from Bill Belichick in New England. If you watch Josh McDaniels out there in Las Vegas, I swear we're stuck in 2010. I swear we are stuck in 2009, 2010 style NFL. It's like Josh McDaniels has been stuck in a carbonation chamber, and they unfroze him, put him back on the field, and all of a sudden he still faces 2010. Because when it comes to Josh McDaniels, why are you running the ball double the amount that you're passing? Why is it that when you're passing, you believe 4 and 5 yard Duncan Chase passes are good enough? Like, I really want to know, what is your mindset, Josh McDaniels, that you believe doing these 5 yard go routes is actually going to help the Raiders be better? Because I swear that when it comes to the Las Vegas Raiders, that's all he does. All he does is just do these 5 yard go routes, these stop and goes, these he does these slant routes, these hook and ladder. It's very predictable what he does in Las Vegas. You rarely ever see him go deep in Las Vegas. In fact, it's actually quite embarrassing that against New Orleans, they did not get past the 50-yard line until 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They did not get past the 50-yard line until they put their backup quarterback in the game. Because once again, that's all they do. All they do are these short passes that irritate me to no end. I mean, this is a Las Vegas team that 145 passing yards total against New Orleans. It's also the same Las Vegas Raiders team that had a total QBR of 59 against New Orleans. So the Las Vegas Raiders are an organization that, outside of Keenan Cole, who had that, 15-yard play, you had no long-term option. Like I said, he does these 5-yard, 10-yard short stop and goes, these 5-yard, 10-yard slant routes, and that's all he does. All he does is these 5, 10-yard plays, occasionally a 15-yard play. Whereas the New Orleans Saints last week, I'll give them a lot of credit, they were consistently doing 10 to 15-yard plays every single time. They were consistently getting the ball past 10 or 15 yards. So, I could talk about the Raiders all day long. I probably could. But, we have 10 minutes left here on Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio with your host, Ian Rickelli. And I have 2 more topics to go over. Now, it's been announced that Las Vegas will be the host site for the 2024 Super Bowl. Now, as a Las Vegas local, I want to give my general reaction to this because Allegiant Stadium is going to be rocking. Allegiant Stadium is going to tear the house down out in Paradise, Nevada. However, I want to say this real quick. Please, 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 pretty please with a cherry on freaking top, do not have it be a West Coast team versus a West Coast team in the Super Bowl. For the love of anything that's Las Vegas, please do not have it be Denver versus Arizona in the Super Bowl. Do not have it be Kansas City versus LA. Do not have it be Las Vegas versus San Francisco. And please do not have it somehow be LA versus Seattle. Because that would be the worst case scenario here in Las Vegas. Not only would it increase by 4 times the amount, but do you realize how bloodthirsty that Super Bowl would be? If Kansas City took on LA, do you know how much destruction would be in Las Vegas? If Kansas City took on LA, could you imagine all of the people in Kansas City that would fly down to Las Vegas and blow all their money at the casino? Could you imagine all the people from LA going from SoFi, coming down to Allegiant, and only occupying 25% of the arena? Vice versa. If LA took on Seattle, could you imagine how only the 10 people who support the Chargers that are left coming down to see it. And as somebody who's been around the Raiders and 49ers, if the Raiders ever played in the Super Bowl next year, if the Raiders somehow took on the 49ers here in Las Vegas, somebody would get stabbed. I'm not saying that because of historical context. I'm just saying that because the 49ers and the Raiders still to this day hate each other. The Raiders and the 49ers is a bloodthirsty rivalry. Raiders fans want to see 49ers fans lose. 49ers fans want to see Raiders fans lose. Could you imagine in Las Vegas a 2024 Super Bowl where Las Vegas and San Francisco would meet in the Super Bowl? That would be the worst case scenario. So my only caveat to Super Bowl being here in 2024 is that if it's Denver versus Arizona, not that people would care, but at least it would be an interesting matchup. If you ended up having Kansas City versus LA, there would be chaos, but at least it would be entertaining. But whatever you do not have a Raiders versus 49ers Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Do not have a Super Bowl where San Francisco could drive one state over and take it over for a weekend. Because that is a scenario that so many people, including myself, would not be able to watch in peace. As a matter of fact, here's what would have to happen. I actually think if you had Buffalo go up against, if you had Buffalo take on Arizona, all right, I could get around that. How about a matchup where Miami takes on LA? I actually would love to see it. How about New England taking on San Francisco, where you have the Patriots and the 49ers if Bill Belichick doesn't retire? Or how about the weirdest scenario? What if the New York Jets, the Jets, Jets, and the Seahawks have the most random matchup in NFL history? Because I want a Super Bowl that's going to be unique. I want a Super Bowl that is going to have both sides be represented, not just West Coast versus West Coast. Give me an East Coast versus West Coast matchup at Allegiant Stadium here in Las Vegas. But, I want to pass it on to everyone watching around the world. What Super Bowl matchup would you want here in Las Vegas? Me, I personally would love to see a Buffalo versus Seattle. Just for laughs and giggles. How about a Buffalo versus Seattle Super Bowl? Because having the Seahawks and the Bills would be a Super Bowl matchup that would absolutely tear down the NFL time curriculum. It's 5 minutes left in the show. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes here. Now, when it comes to the Super Bowl, Buffalo versus Seattle would be fun. New York versus San Francisco would be hilarious. And LA versus Miami would be a fantastic Super Bowl. But what do you want? And then one last segment here on Sports Angle. Who should be the starting quarterback in New England? Should it be Zappy time or should it be mac and cheese? I'm going to make this very simple. Zappy time is here to stay. Zappy time is here in New England. Mac Jones was a bust at Alabama. Mac Jones was overrated in Alabama. And Mac Jones, he could not cut it. Mac Jones is not the guy that New England thought he was going to be. So Bailey Zappi spending 1 year at Western Kentucky, getting drafted in the 4th round this year. He should be the guy moving forward. So, when it comes to my opinion, it comes to what's happening. What doesn't end up happening is when it comes to the situation, when it comes to what's going on here in New England, I'm going to go with Bailey Zappi. And I'm going to go with a situation where you have a young rookie who understands the Bill Belichick system and somebody who's going to end up being a future asset in New England. Mac Jones, he'll be shipped off to someplace else. He'll be a backup quarterback in the NFL for a while. But you will have a situation where New England will have a rookie quarterback, was drafted lower in the draft, and he will take over in New England. I think we've seen that happen before. I think we've seen this story play out before, where a young rookie, up-and-coming quarterback takes over in New England and carries the offense for a while. So this was a fantastic episode of the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. I want to give a quick shout out, by the way, to all the people at PR Connections Radio. I want to give a quick shout out to, for example, the Professionals podcast. They put out a show very recently. Go check that out. Cozy Stone, she brings on a bunch of amazing guests. She does interviews with some highly educated people. So check out Cozy Stone. So You Want a BA with Brian Gardner. Voices of Humanity with Sandra. And Shirley, by the way, I know you're obviously still supporting PR Connections Radio, and I know you do support my show. So, Aunt Shirley, I do give a shout out to you. And Guy Dawson for founding PR Connections Radio. Because without him, this show would not exist. So, Guy Dawson, want to give a shout out to you. And also The Love of Business, because The Love of Business, that is a fantastic show. So you have the Professionals, Love of Business, the Professional Podcast. You have Vegas Hockey Hub, hosted by yours truly, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. I go over all the latest and breaking in the hockey world. I talk about the Vegas Golden Knights, Henderson Silver Knights, UNLV hockey. I go over what's going on in the West Coast region in the hockey world. So Vegas Hockey Hub, check out that as well. And for our upcoming episode of the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, I'm going to be bringing on a guest I've had on in the past and someone who is very well knowledge about the world of sports. So until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. Continue watching football and have a great weekend.